Greetings, greetings. Sending you all some warm, positive vibrations. So, there's just here reasoning with my sister. And we were just, reasoning on patterns. Patterns. And patterns are really, really helpful because they can help you really cut to the core when it comes to cultivating discernment, right? And to understand when you're being manipulated, your potential to be manipulated. I'm not saying to make you paranoid, but I'm just saying so we can cultivate discernment, right? In the age of political campaigns, new age and cult, new age beliefs and cult-like characters, everybody vying for your attention and your dollar. How can you tell who you're dealing with and who has intentions that are not to turn you out or to exploit you? How can you really know, especially if you're a young person or even if you're perhaps older, but you don't have a frame of reference? You may not have a frame of reference for cults. You may genuinely not have a frame of reference for any experience. Fortunately, with this age of the internet and computers and phones, you have the ability to see patterns. Quite often we're distracted by personality profiles, right? If something pushes a trigger, right, where you're either entertained or it comes in a form that you like the hair, you like the fact that somebody sounds like you looks like you, comes from the same ethnic group, comes from the same borough, same town. They seem to represent a similar value system. Maybe you think you have the same sexuality. Maybe you think you come from the same economic bracket. Perhaps you think you've gone through similar trauma and you're bonding, you're connecting because you've had similar trauma. But being able to see these patterns quickly, right, is very, very important, because a predator, a manipulator, a cult leader, regardless of the label, it happens on different levels, on a small scale and also on a grand scale, where whole populations are manipulated into stuff. You know, my sister was watching a documentary on Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, and Churchill, and observing how they were all playing each other. They all had their movements. Some were responsible for killing thousands, hundreds of thousands more people. And one distinction was, I thought stood out as my sister was watching one of these documentaries, was that, for example, Hitler got all of these people to follow and do his bidding. You'll find this pattern in cults, right? And they're legal cults, illegal cults. There's a cult. Let's be clear. There's a cult. They're all over the place. They exist. So how can you hold on to and cultivate your critical thinking, your common sense? We were born with common sense. Innocent at first, lacking a frame of reference for the outside dealings of adults, but we have an on-board innate common sense. What did people do before books? Right, that could preserve and write down patterns. What did people, if you didn't have another book, could you make a common sense decision about what to eat, who to trust, who to let into your pocketbook, your psyche, your panties, into your bedroom without a book? Can you figure that out? Do you trust yourself? Maybe you don't. If we don't, quite often it's due to trauma. Predators and manipulators make it their business. Make it their business. It is key and it's intrinsic to their power and their ability to manipulate, to scan anybody's insecurities. Quite often when we're bonding, today it's very common to bond off of trauma, past hurt, say, oh, you went through that, I went through that too. And this person that plays very much, usually on being a father figure, women can manipulate too, but usually the desire or need for a guide or a father, a loving, safe father, is manipulated to the max. And to be clear, this is with men and women. It reads quite often as desperation. Now, intellectually, may think that we're too smart to be manipulated. Not me, I can never be desperate. I'm not desperate. But there are certain patterns that are subconscious. And so as someone engages us in conversation, especially gift of gab, that is often asking questions, and we are gladly answering because we're so glad to have somebody to listen to us, to hear our story that we wanted to get out from a child about our trauma, and to feel validated. See, these are key patterns. We all have a need to feel validated. And again, our ego will make us think, and blindside us and make us think, I'm too old for that. I got too much money for that. I got too much degrees for that. I'm a male. I'm a grown woman. Not me. I have everything met. Trust me, all human beings have a need to be validated because we're all children once. Most of us have experienced some kind of trauma, to greater or lesser degrees, trauma or neglect. And so when we think we have a listening ear, we may not realize that we're being audited, right? When we're telling all of these vital pieces of information about ourselves that someone can take and assess on where are your weak points, where they could actually manipulate you, extract information, extract resources, or to get you to do things, right? But meanwhile, we're thinking, we're harmlessly sharing. This person is such a good listener. So many of us would not even consider ourselves as being desperate. So I invite folks in your quiet moments, right? Anything I say here is not the truth. This is just one woman's perspective. I'm not, let me be very clear, male or female, whatever walk of life, I'm not asking for validation. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me if you like or you agree or you disagree. I'm not asking for your permission in regards to whether you have locks, raw food, meat eater. You could be my parents. I'm not asking for permission at all. I'm sharing one person's perspective. This may be valuable to someone that's looking just to educate themselves on patterns. I don't know everything. I'm humble enough to know that I don't know everything. I'm just sharing my experience and my perspective so that perhaps someone could peep game to patterns, right? So we don't always have to go through these heart-wrenching experiences. Life will give us some experience, but we don't all have to go experience putting ourselves in harm's way in order to get a lesson, right? This may be perhaps maybe valuable to someone. I've watched grown adult women, very successful with several degrees and financial resources. I've watched grown adult men surrender their critical thinking and put more trust in another person outside of themselves to make basic decisions than they trust themselves. Why? Why would we do that? What would be the reason? And you answer this in your quiet moments for yourself. What would be the reason to ask another human being with their own flaws and with their own issues and inadequacies? Doesn't make them necessarily a bad person. But what would be the reason to place more trust in another human being when you're a grown adult than yourself? What does that say? That says it shows a lack of confidence, insecurity. Often it can show the trauma or unresolved trauma that would render us not feeling very confident to make sound decisions. Maybe we don't feel that we'd be disciplined on our own. However, ultimately, there's a reason why we would place our trust more in another human being more than ourselves. Maybe we're looking to escape responsibility. Maybe you want a shortcut. Many men may not consider themselves desperate, but a male, just as a woman, our desperation quite often we can't see, and it's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's definitely something that can be manipulated. Men can show up as desperate too. Perhaps, again, they're missing out on a relationship with their father, and they're looking to feel heard and validated by a male presence. Women as well want to feel safe in a father presence, that they're being heard and validated and listened to. That this is a person they can trust. But quite often, this is without a thorough vetting process. Many people in cults feel such a reverence for this older person or this cult, this icon, that they won't ask any uncomfortable questions. Or should they ask a very critical or a question about something they're uncomfortable with, they will allow themselves to be appeased with circular words, circular rhetoric, with a word salad. And in their mind, the thing that you desire or your that you want to see, or this vision, or this, even maybe sometimes even a fantasy, might not be it might be a well-intentioned fantasy of a utopia, but it will often blindside us to what is right in front of us because we want for something so bad to be the truth. So we can turn a blind eye to someone being a manipulator, a liar, misusing young adults sexually, scamming, all kind of behavior. You might see something right in front of your face, and you'll start rationalizing it and justifying, well, this is not cool. This doesn't make sense. But we're creating this community. We want everything. What you want to see can blindside you, right? Can blindside you to what is being demonstrated right in front of you. And should you ask a question, this is deep. This is really something, how your mind will rationalize and justify, because you don't want to wrap your mind around the fact that somebody who you're trusting, that you're looking up to, another human being with flaws in their own issues, could manipulate a young person, could be a scammer, could be doing something inappropriate, right? We're transferring something onto this person that we're rendering greater than our own onboard common sense. And I've seen this with grown adult men and grown adult women. We want something to be so bad, to be so bad. So, our desperation, cult leaders, manipulators pick up on it. Just like a pimp at the train station that sees a young girl or a young man walk off the bus and look like they're hungry and it's cold. Pick up on it really, really easy. So you may not think that we're desperate, but the desperation is what will get you got. So running away for something. I don't want to go back to the job. I don't want to deal with this relationship. I don't want to go back to the house I was dealing with. I'm divorced now, and I'm single, and I just want to try something different. I want somebody to love me for me. All of these different things can really blind you. If you ask a question, your questions are not answered directly. You get a word salad. Just hopefully put this in your mental Rolodex. You're invited. I don't tell grown folks what to do. You're invited to put this into your mental Rolodex. It's a red flag if you just met with rhetoric and justifications and rationalizations for behavior, which your gut is telling you is off, but somehow, well, maybe it's not really what I'm seeing. Maybe it's this. Because if you're isolated in a cult, everything that you see that does not add up within your gut, you're going to be given a rhetorical reason for it. That's a fact. So I don't want to go on and on today. I just invite folks to consider, if there were no more books on this planet, what would you rely on? If you didn't have a high priest, priestess, pastor, imam, could you rely on your own common sense? Do you always need a middleman or middle woman to give you their interpretation of life? Does that trump your common sense? Does what anybody else has gone through, does it trump your common sense? People can give you sharing some very valid universal truths, which, by the way, belong to no man or woman. But does it trump your common sense? Are you willing to allow a process, maybe perhaps to take a little bit longer, so that you can develop a trust for your own common sense rather than rush and jump into something, right? To try to take a shortcut. Because understand, this is definitely it's one of the ways, especially, that men are manipulated, right? Young men and older men, anybody can be manipulated into a cult. And this is a time on the planet. Look around. It's like so many different versions of cults. People think they run away from cults, but it's not just the cult. It's a mentality. It's a mentality of how, as humans, we allow ourselves to be manipulated because we don't want to deal. We don't want the responsibility. We don't want to deal with the fact that there's pain in life, there's death in life. Money comes, money goes. Things change. The 6 basic fears. Perhaps you're invited to look up the 6 basic fears, because this is the human psyche. When I just talk about the conscious, most of what we do, 80% of what we do is from the subconscious mind. So companies, entities, now all this esoteric information is available at the touch of your fingertips, and people make it their business. Manipulators make it their business to study and become masters of it, simply because you can get people to do whatever you want to do. Your uniform, your posture, your looks, your gab. You can manipulate massive people to kill each other, bombs, to eat stuff that they're not designed to eat. It's not hard to manipulate human beings. You're welcome. It's not hard to manipulate human beings. So again, what I'm saying is not the truth. I invite you, use your own onboard common sense. Whose common sense manipulates or trumps yours? And if you're not used to using this is not meant to be insulting. Maybe perhaps you're not used to trusting yourself. Again, that can be twisted up because of many of us being exposed to trauma or not resolving or putting into perspective trauma. trauma, neglect, societal trauma, trauma within your own family or community. We do have the ability today to deal with those things and put them into these old things that have happened to us and put them into a perspective. We can't change them, but we can put them into a perspective, so resolve them, and we perhaps not allow insecurities around unresolved trauma to allow us to be manipulated, right? So that we are manipulated, so that folks gain entrance to, and we give people entrance and permission, right, to make basic life decisions for us, what to say, when to have sex. You know, we allow other people to tell us all of this stuff and totally negate our own common sense. So we don't have to do that. You know, with common sense, it comes responsibility. And some processes may be longer or harder. Maybe longer or harder for you to figure out how to work your relationship, leave a relationship, manage your money. What it may be longer or harder, but it's quite a doozy. We render ourselves, I would almost say like, oof, I almost want to say like, study animal. I invite you to look up animal husbandry and understand that many cons and cult leaders are going to tell you to look out for other cons and cult leaders. So you're invited to cultivate discernment, own common sense. Do understand that males and females, even grown adults, by playing to the 6 basic fears of man, can be manipulated to do anything, to follow somebody like a Hitler, to follow a gang leader and sell drugs to people in your community. You know, it's like whoever we allow, we're giving permission. We're taking our most precious ability to make decisions for ourselves because of trauma, because of fear, and we're placing it in somebody else's hands. That's a lot. And your desperation, they can sense it. They can smell your desperation. Only you can ask yourself in your quiet moments by yourself, is there anything I'm desperate about? Is there any unresolved trauma? Because mass manipulators they are highly skilled at picking up on your insecurities and unresolved issues. And while you're busy thinking you're sharing with such a good listener, quite often you're being audited. I'm going to end with this. Please understand that you will be used to lure in other people, males and females. Women, you will be used to bring in other women. Because if other women with common sense see you in something and you had a couple of degrees, or you seem like a smart woman and fit and educator, you're so devoted, and you appear to be looking so happy, right? They may not know that you're miserable, that you're indecisive, or you don't know what the heck is going on, but just your example, you're likely manipulated to lure in other people by your example. This is a technique. The manipulator knows this. When other men see other men inside of a cult, it sparks the curiosity of a human being. Know this, you will be used to lure other people in. A congregation, more followers. If these people are following, you know, human beings, we follow a lot of times out of curiosity. And you may not know, you will likely not know what the heck is going on inside of these cults. You don't know who's who. Folks don't know people's legal names. You don't know people's legal names. You don't know nothing about how they resolve conflict. You don't know who's got what kind of physical conditions. You don't know nothing. And folks, you're coming in with a fantasy, right? Often, again, your desires, even though they may be well-meaning desires, the desires of what you want to see. You want something, you want it to utopia. You want things to be so righteous, so bad that we can allow ourselves to be blindsided and to make rationalizations and justifications for things that you see that in your gut don't sit right with you. Like, that don't add up. Like, where did this person come from? And what the heck was that I just saw? But you want something to be so bad, you can be blindsided. Men and women, understand, men and women can be manipulated. I've seen it with grown adult men and women. You will be lured, especially women, but men too. You'll be used to lure other people into a cult, right? And you'll be used to help break them in, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly. Usually after you've been in it really, really deep. But some people without even knowing it. Because if you have morals or standards and you hold any kind of position of trust in your community with your clients, around communities where there are lots of young people, because these are masterminds you're dealing with, you will be used and manipulated. You may even volunteer to be used to bring other people in because you're holding fast to a principle. But some patterns, right, as we cultivate our discernment, is did you ask uncomfortable questions? Were your uncomfortable yet critical and respectful questions met with word salad and circular rhetoric, right? Things that just did not add up. But again, your eye gets distracted to this colorful, utopia that you want to see, or it's all raw foods, it's nature. By now, there's enough information online and the internet. Everybody doesn't have to go um, through putting themselves in harm's way and getting these massive amounts of trauma in order to get a lesson. Life is going to give us some lessons and we will acquire wisdom with life experience. But it's not everything you need to expose yourself to in order to get a lesson and some common sense. So it's bigger than any one individual or any one individual cult. There are definitely some lessons. There are definitely some lessons that have come to the surface for us to deal with. But I can tell you, your desperation, only you can ask yourself in your quiet moments, is there anything that I'm desperate about? Are there any kind of insecurities? Because if we should be cocky or think that we're too smart for anything to happen to us, that's how we're massively being manipulated by political parties, religion against religion. It really makes no sense. We become divided and not we're overlooking basic human character. You put all your trust in these so-called leaders and these icons. And when you see something basic that's off, you make rationalizations and justifications and excuses for it. So if you get rid of all the books, what do you have left? Can your common sense that you were born with, can it stand on its own? Do you allow your common sense to serve you, or do you make rationalizations and justifications because I already bought all the outfits? I already had a baby in the cult. I'm in deep. And so you may feel like you're too deep to turn back. So I want to send some encouragement out to the parents of those folks that may be grown adults that are in cults. I invite you to educate yourself. There's only so much time and bandwidth we have, but education on all levels is an investment. Do know, as I've said before, if you want to go to the tropics, you can do that on your own. You can really make arrangements so it's done safely. If you want to relocate, whether it's to Africa, Central America, South America, you can really do that. You just take your time and do due diligence, cross-reference people because you do not know the people that you have not lived with. People can paint any kind of picture on a screen. Be wary of folks that cannot speak without the okay from other people that can't use their own common sense to speak. Because if you're sitting around and it feels really weird and odd, your common sense is telling you something for a reason. So with that, you're invited to keep your critical thinking caps on. I invite you can start a garden. If you like, even if you're in a small apartment in a colder climate, you can exercise and get yourself in shape. You can give yourself the validation that you've been looking for from others. I invite you to handle your relationship issues on your own. Be careful of who you go to for counsel, because you may be going to somebody for counsel and advice on your relationships and not realize they have a whole nother agenda. So it's endless. I'm not going to spend too much time here. You have common sense. You were born with it. You were born with it. You can cultivate your discernment. All right, folks, create a great day and keep your thinking caps on.